Good morning. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, context is everything, Media Network. Founder and CEO, John Michael, coming to you with episode 58 of Ambient Classroom, where I read this world history textbook cover to cover to build my historical context on this context is everything journey that we're on together. In the spirit of context being everything, I'm reading this textbook, which means that on Friday I read this textbook as well. Things go in sequence, so I will read what happened on Friday now to develop context for today's reading. Friday's reading was chapter 11.2, The Golden Age of Muslim Civilization. Today is chapter 11.4. Wait, what? I guess that's a typo. Friday was chapter 11.3, The Golden Age of Muslim Civilization. Today is chapter 11.4, Muslims in India. So let's look at Fridays to develop our context for today. Starting in 830, Abbasid Caliph al-Mamun, prompted by a vivid dream, set up the House of Wisdom, a library and university in Baghdad. Islam absorbed traditions from many cultures, and in the process flourishing cities arose, from Damascus to Cairo to Cordoba, and later Delhi in India. Society and economy. Muslim rulers united people from diverse cultures, including Arabs, Persians, Egyptians, and other Africans and Europeans. Later, Mongols, Turks, Indians, and people in Southeast Asia declared their faith to Islam. As in most developing empires, slavery was a common institution in these cities of the Muslim world. There were some rules, though. Muslims could not be enslaved, and conversion to Islam as a slave would free your children. Women slaves who married her owner would also gain freedom. Slaves could also buy their freedom. So there was a way out. As in most developing empires, slavery was a common institution in the cities of the Muslim world. There were some rules, though. Muslims could not be enslaved. And wait, what? There were some rules, though. What? Oh, I just started reading the same freaking thing over again. Sorry about that, folks. Just a little bit of context about me. I'm not very good at reading, so I'm going to go pretty slow so that I don't do what I just did again. Merchants were honored in the Muslim world, in part because Muhammad had been a merchant. Couriers of the horizon and God's trusted servants on earth. Couriers of the horizon and God's trusted servants on earth. That's a quote from... That is a quote from Sayings of the Prophets, which is apparently a Muslim text. I guess, right? Between 750 and 1350, merchants built vast trading networks across the Muslim world and beyond, spreading Islam peacefully in their wake. Camel caravans known as the ships of the desert brought them west to Africa. There, other traders traveled the Silk Road to China, and monsoon winds carried Arab ships from East Africa to India. They also created banks with branches so money could be exchanged. If you had an account in Baghdad, for example, you could access your funds in Cairo with an ancient check called a sak, S-A-K-K. Artisans produced masterful textiles, glassware, furniture, and tapestries in the Muslim world. With fertile lands all around the Arab world, and savvy farming and irrigation techniques, herbs, spices, and flowers bolstered their mercantile expertise. Arts and literature. In Islam, idol worship was strictly prohibited, or is strictly prohibited. This means no paintings or representations could be made of God or Muhammad, as they would be seen as idols. As a result, Muslims decorated their mosques, or places of worship, with arabesque. And this is an intricate design composed of curved lines that suggest floral shapes. This was also used in rugs, textiles, and glassware. They perfected the art of calligraphy as well, which is beautiful handwriting. Domed mosques and high minarets dominated Muslim cities in the same way that cathedral spires dominated medieval Christian cities. A strong theme in Muslim poetry, we're talking about arts and literature, strong theme in Muslim poetry was reflecting on the nomadic lifestyle. Omar Khayyam meditates with an interesting quote in his poem, which goes, "The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on, nor all your piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all your tears wash out a word of it." Now you can wash out a word of it because you can just press backspace on your keyboard, but back then, once you wrote something, you were well on your way to that being the final draft, because you'd have to rewrite the whole thing. Taking a lot of time here. Okay. The 1001 Nights, also known as Arabian Nights, is a collection of tales narrated by a fictional princess, Scheherazade. This collection includes romances, fables, adventures, and humorous anecdotes. It also includes Aladdin and his magic lamp. We all know what that turned into. Massive Disney property. The world of learning. Boys and girls were provided with elementary education. This training emphasized reading and writing, especially the study of the Quran. Institutions of higher learning included schools for religious instruction and for the study of Islamic law. Centers of learning were in Baghdad, Cairo, Bukhara, Timbuktu, and Córdoba. In all of these places, Muslim scholars made advances in philosophy, mathematics, medicine, and other fields. Philosopher Ibn Khaldun urged historians to trust sources only after thorough investigation. In the 800s, the great Muslim mathematician was Al-Khwarizmi. He wrote a book that was later translated into Latin and became a standard mathematics textbook in Europe. Al-Khwarizmi also was an astronomer. In observatories from Baghdad to Central Asia, Muslim astronomers studied eclipses, observed the Earth's rotation, and calculated the circumference of the Earth within a few thousand feet. Under the caliphs, physicians and pharmacists had to pass a test before they could practice their profession. The government also set up hospitals with a sort of emergency room. "Treat the mind as well as the body," Muhammad al-Rizi echoed. He valued a good bedside manner for all of his students. Persian physician Ibn Sina wrote the Canon on Medicine, a huge encyclopedia of Greek, Arab, and his own learnings about diagnosis, treatment of disease, with 4,000 prescriptions made with ingredients such as mercury, myrrh, and camphor. Mercury's not good for you. Muslim surgeons treated cataracts by drawing fluid out of lenses of the eye with a hollow needle. This was the standard procedure for centuries. Thank you for bearing with me. 10 minutes of note reading. That is excessive. I acknowledge that. Moving on. Chapter 11.4. Muslims in India. let's get into it. I definitely have to adjust the way I write these notes. They take too long to write and they take too long to read. I think I'm going to have to be a little bit more brief with them. Let's try that today. I'll use these to take sticky notes. As I read, setting the scene. The whole of India is full of gold and jewels. The whole of India is full of gold and jewels. Advisors told Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, Ghazni, Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni. And since the inhabitants are chiefly infidels and idolaters by the order of God, let me start this whole freaking chapter over again. I'm doing really rough here. Setting the scene. The whole of India is full of gold and jewels. Advisors told Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, and since the inhabitants are chiefly infidels and idolaters by the order of God and his prophet, it is right for us to conquer them. In 1001, Mahmud led his armies into northern India. Smashing and looting Hindu temples, Mahmud used the fabulous riches of India to turn his capital into a great Muslim center. Later, Muslim invaders did more than loot and destroy. They built a dazzling new Muslim empire in India. The arrival of Islam brought changes to India as great as those caused by the Aryan migrations 2,000 years earlier. As Muslims mingled with Indians, each civilization absorbed elements of the other. Heading: the Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate. Heading: after the Gupta Empire in about 550 AD, India again fragmented into many local kingdoms. Rival princes battled for control of the northern plain. Despite power struggles, Indian culture flourished. Hindu and Buddhist rulers spent huge sums to build and decorate magnificent temples. Trade networks linked India to the Middle East, Southeast Asia to China. Subheading: origins of the Sultanate. Although Arabs conquered the Indus Valley in 711, they advanced no further into the subcontinent. Then, about 1,000 Muslim Turks and Afghans pushed into India. At first, they were adventurers like Mahmud, who pillaged much of the north. However, in the late 1100s, the Sultan of Ghur defeated Hindu armies across the northern plain. He made Delhi his capital. From there, his successors organized a sultanate, or land ruled by a sultan. The Delhi Sultanate, which lasted from 1206 to 1526, marked the start of Muslim rule in northern India. Why did the Muslim invaders triumph? They won on the battlefield, in part because Muslim mounted archers had far greater mobility than Hindu forces who rode slow-moving war elephants. Also, Hindu princes wasted resources battling one another instead of against a common enemy. In some places, large numbers of Hindus, especially from low castes, converted to Islam. In Hindu society, social systems, you will recall people were born into castes or social groups from which they could not change. That's a difference. Effects on Muslim rule. Muslim rule brought changes to Indian government and society. Sultans introduced Muslim traditions of government. Many Turks, Persians, and Arabs migrated to India to serve as soldiers or officials. Trade between India and Muslim world increased. During the Mongol raids of the 1200s, many scholars and adventurers fled from Baghdad to India, bringing Persian and Greek learning. The newcomers helped create a brilliant civilization at Delhi, where Persian art and architecture flourished. Decline. In 1398, Tamerlane invaded India. He plundered the northern plain and smashed into Delhi. Not a bird on the wing moved. Not a bird on the wing moved, reported stunned survivors. Thousands of artisans were enslaved to build Tamerlane's capital at Samarkand. Delhi, an empty shell, slowly recovered, but the sultans no longer controlled large empire, and northern India again fragmented, this time into rival Hindu and Muslim states. Muslims and Hindus, new heading. At its worst, the Muslim conquest of northern India inflicted disaster on Hindus and Buddhists. The widespread destruction of Buddhist monasteries contributed to the drastic decline of Buddhism as a major religion in India. During the most violent onslaught, many Hindus were killed. Others may have converted to escape death. In time, though, relations became more peaceful. Hindu-Muslim differences. The Muslim advance brought two utterly different religions and cultures face to face. Hinduism was an ancient religion that had evolved over thousands of years. Hindus recognized many sacred texts and prayed before statues representing many gods and goddesses. Islam, by contrast, was a newer faith with single sacred text. Muslims were devout monotheists who saw statues and carvings in Hindu temples as an offense to the one true God. Hindus accepted differences in caste status and honored Brahmins as priestly caste. Muslims taught that equality of all believers before God had no religious hierarchy. Hindus celebrated religious occasions with music and dance, practices that many strict Muslims condemned. Interactions between Hindus and Muslims. Eventually, the Delhi sultans grew more tolerant of their subject population. Some Muslim scholars argued that behind the many Hindu gods and goddesses was a single god. Hinduism was thus accepted as a monotheistic religion, although Hindus remained second-class citizens. As long as they paid the non-Muslim tax, they could practice their religion. Some sultans even left rajas, or local Hindu rulers, in place. During the Delhi Sultanate, a growing number of Hindus converted to Islam. Some lower caste Hindus preferred Islam because it rejected the caste system. Other converts came from higher castes. They chose to adopt Islam either because they accepted its beliefs or because they served in the Muslim government. Indian merchants were attracted to Islam in part because of the strong trade networks across Muslim land. Cultural blending. Subheading. During this period, too, Indian Muslims absorbed elements of the Hindu culture, such as marriage customs and caste ideas. A new language, Urdu, U-R-D-U, evolved as a marriage of Persian, Arabic, and Hindi. Local artisans applied Persian art styles to Indian subjects. Indian music and dance reappeared in the courts of the Sultan. An Indian holy man, Nanak, sought to blend Islamic and Hindu beliefs. He preached the unity of God and brotherhood of man, the rejection of caste, and the futility of idol worship. His teachings led to the rise of a new religion, Sikhism, in northern India. The Sikhs later organized into military forces that clashed with powerful Mughal rulers of India. Mughal India. New heading. In 1526, Turkish and Mongol invaders again poured through the mountain passes in India. At their head rode Babur, who claimed descent from Genghis Khan and Tamerlane. Babur was a military genius, poet, and author of fascinating book of memoirs. Babur founds a dynasty. Just north of Delhi, Babur met a huge army led by Sultan Ibrahim. I place my foot in the stirrup of resolution. I place my foot in the stirrup of resolution, and my hands on the reins of confidence in God, recalled Babur. His force was small but had cannons, which he put to good use. The sun had mounted spear high. The sun had mounted spear high when the onslaught began, and the battle lasted till midday, when the enemy was completely broken and routed. By the grace and mercy of Almighty God, this difficult affair was made easy to me, and the mighty army was crushed to the dust. In no time, Babur swept away the remnants of Delhi Sultanate and set up the Mughal dynasty, which ruled from 1526 to 1857. Babur and his heirs conquered an empire stretched from the Himalayas to the Deccan Plateau. Akbar the Great. The chief builder of the Mughal Empire was Babur's grandson, Akbar. During his long reign of 1556 to 1605, he created a strong central government, earning the title Akbar the Great. Akbar was a leader of unusual abilities. Although a Muslim, he won the support of Hindu subjects through his policy of toleration. He opened his government jobs to Hindus of all castes and treated Hindu princes as partners in ruling the vast empire. He ended tax on non-Muslims and himself married a Hindu princess. Akbar could not read or write, but he consulted leaders of many faiths, including Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, and Christians. Like the early Indian leader Asoka, he hoped to promote religious harmony through toleration. By recognizing India's diversity, Akbar placed Mughal power on the firm footing. Akbar strengthened his empire in other ways as well. To improve government, he used paid officials to place a hereditary hereditary office holders. He modernized the army, encouraged international trade, standardized weights and measures, and introduced land reforms. Akbar's successors. Akbar's son, Jahangir, was a weaker ruler than his father. He left most details of government in the hands of his wife, Nur Jahan. Fortunately, she was an able leader whose shrewd political judgment was matched by her love of poetry and royal sports. She was the most powerful woman in Indian history up until the 20th century. The high point of Mughal literature and art and architecture came with the reign of Shah Jahan, Akbar's grandson. When his wife, Mamats Mahal, died at age 39, Shah Jahan was distraught. "Empire has no sweetness," he cried. "Life itself has no relish left for me now." He then had a stunning tomb built for her, the Taj Mahal. Oh, wow. It was designed in Persian style, with spectacular white domes and graceful minarets mirrored in clear blue reflecting pools. Verses from the Quran adorn its walls, and the Taj Mahal stands as perhaps the greatest monument of the Mughal Empire. Shah Jahan planned to build twin structures to the Taj Mahal as a tomb for himself. However, before he could do so, his son Aurangzeb usurped the throne in 1658. Shah Jahan was kept imprisoned until he died several years later. Weird. Okay, looking ahead, we're almost there. Thank you for joining me and bearing with me. Looking ahead, in the late 1600s, the Emperor Aurangzeb rejected Akbar's tolerant policies and resumed persecution of Hindus. Economic hardship increased under his heavy taxes, and discontent sparked revolts against Mughal rule. As you will read, this climate of discomfort helped European traders gain a foothold in the once powerful Mughal Empire. I've been calling it Mughal, it's Mughal. Thank you for joining me. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I need to get better at reading. Context is everything. Thank you. Thank you.